The fluorescent lights in the small-town laundromat hummed softly, casting a pale glow over rows of idle machines. It was late, nearly closing, but one corner still held life. A young woman knelt by the deep metal sink, sleeves rolled up, her fingers red from the cold water. Beside her, a little girl sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring on a wrinkled scrap of paper with a stubby crayon, humming softly to herself. The woman's motions were careful but quick, scrubbing tiny shirts and socks against a washboard surface, rinsing them twice to be sure. The Undercover CEO, dressed in worn jeans and a hoodie to blend in, paused as he walked past, curiosity catching him mid-step. "Machines are all open," he said lightly. She glanced up, offered a polite smile, then returned to her work. "I can't afford the quarters tonight," she replied, almost as if explaining to herself. "But she needs clean clothes for school tomorrow." Her voice was soft, but steady. He watched her for a moment, noticing the fatigue in her eyes, the quiet dignity in the way she kept working without complaint. The little girl looked up, beaming at him, then went back to her drawing, blissfully unaware of the conversation. In that moment, something shifted in him. This wasn't just a mother doing laundry. It was a mother fighting, quietly and without fanfare, to give her child the smallest piece of normalcy. He didn't yet know what he would do, but he knew he couldn't just walk away. He lingered by the row of dryers, pretending to check his phone, but his attention kept drifting back to her. The sink water had turned cloudy, yet she moved with practiced patience, wringing out each shirt until it was as light as she could make it. Finally, he walked over and asked, "Do you live nearby?" She nodded, explaining in measured tones that she worked 2 jobs, one at a diner, the other cleaning offices at night. Her husband had passed away from an illness 2 years ago, leaving her with debts she was still trying to pay down. The medical bills came every month like clockwork, no matter how many hours she worked. She didn't say it with bitterness, only fact, as if life had trained her to keep moving without stopping to feel the weight. Between her words, she smiled at her daughter, who was now proudly showing him her drawing, a stick-figure family with a big yellow sun. He noticed how the mother's tired expression would soften when she looked at her child, the exhaustion slipping away for a heartbeat. He asked why she didn't get help from relatives, and she shrugged, saying they lived far away and had their own struggles. There was no trace of self-pity in her voice, only resolve. It struck him deeply. She was surviving on sheer willpower and love, not waiting for rescue. The more she spoke, the more he felt the tightening in his chest. She reminded him of his own mother years ago, working against the odds, quietly carrying the world. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a few coins, and offered them with a gentle smile. "Let me cover the machines for you tonight." She shook her head almost immediately, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you, but we'll manage. I don't want to take from anyone else." Her pride was quiet but unyielding, and he respected it, even admired it, but he also knew he couldn't just let the night end like this. So he crouched down to the little girl's level, grinning conspiratorially. "How about we make it a game? You help me race the washing machines, and if we win, I get to pay." Her eyes widened, and she laughed, a light, ringing sound that filled the empty laundromat. The mother hesitated, caught between refusing again and not spoiling her daughter's fun. Finally, she sighed, smiling despite herself. "All right, but only because she's in charge now." They loaded the clothes together, the girl giggling as she pushed buttons and pressed start. The rhythmic swish of the washers replaced the sound of the sink. While the cycles spun, he excused himself to grab a snack, slipping out into the cold night air. Outside, his expression shifted, no longer casual, but intent. He pulled out his phone and made a quiet call, his voice low but decisive. He wasn't just paying for laundry tonight. Plans were already forming in his mind, and he could feel a sense of purpose settling in. By the time he stepped back inside, he knew exactly what he was going to do next. The next morning, the mother was surprised to get a call from the laundromat owner, asking if she could stop by. She arrived with her daughter in tow, expecting maybe a lost item had been found. Instead, she froze at the sight before her. The man from the night before was standing there, but not in the worn hoodie and jeans. Today, he wore a crisp suit, his posture commanding yet warm. "I should probably introduce myself properly," he began with a small smile. He told her his real name, the company he ran, and how he'd been visiting towns undercover to better understand the struggles people faced. She blinked, the words not quite registering. Then he held out a thick envelope. Inside was a year's rent, paid in advance. He explained that a washer and dryer were already scheduled for delivery to her home that week, no more nights at the laundromat. But that wasn't all. "I'd like you to work for my company," he said, "full-time, with benefits, and a schedule that lets you be with your daughter." Her lips parted in shock. Tears welled up before she could stop them, spilling as her little girl hugged her leg and beamed up at the man. Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The CEO shook his head softly. "You've been doing all the hard work. This is just a little help to make it easier." In that small laundromat, with the smell of soap in the air, her life had just changed forever. Months later, the transformation was unmistakable. The woman who had once knelt at a laundromat sink now walked with her head high, her smile bright and unguarded. She had settled into her new job, her desk decorated with her daughter's drawings and a small plant she watered every morning. Bills were no longer a shadow lurking over every decision, and evenings were spent cooking dinner, helping with homework, and laughing together without the constant worry of what tomorrow might bring. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in how she gave back. Every Saturday, she volunteered at the local shelter, folding donated clothes, serving meals, and quietly slipping gift cards into the pockets of coats for other struggling parents to find. She never told them where the help came from, she just wanted them to feel, if only for a moment, that someone cared. One afternoon, the CEO stopped by the shelter. She greeted him with a hug and a slice of homemade pie, laughing that she'd been saving the best piece for him. They sat for a while, watching families come and go, and he couldn't help but feel proud, not for what he'd given, but for what she had built from it. In that warm, bustling room, it was clear that kindness had rippled outward from a single act in a laundromat months ago. What began as help for one person had become hope for many, a living reminder that when compassion is shared, it doesn't just change lives. It multiplies them.